the other ones are terrible.
Well, I like the ones too. That one kind of stands out. I like the yellow and the black.
Have you seen the movie?
No.
Oh, you're missing out.
Is it scary?
Zombies.
Definitely won't watch it.
Oh, it's a classic. Am I good to go?
Whenever you're ready.
All right. My name's Jared. I'm going to do a speech for you now. I want you to imagine a world where there's no mistakes, where every offer is accepted no matter how absurd and nonsensical it may be, and the fun and good times never stop. I bet right now you're thinking, wow, what kind of Kool-Aid has this guy been drinking? That doesn't exist in this world. But there is a place, and it exists on the stage. Today, I'm going to inform you about the wonderful world of improv and how you can become a part of it. Improv is a part of my life. I am a member of PANTS. That's the PCC improv troupe, People Acting Not Too Seriously. A few terms ago, I took the beginning improv class, TA 144, and I got kind of hooked. It's like a drug. And so I took the class again, and then I moved on to TA 244, the advanced class. And we had to do a couple research projects, and that involved some internet Googling, some research, and some books. That's where I acquired a lot of knowledge about the subject, and that's where a lot of the information comes from for today. And today, I'm going to share with you what I've learned. I'll start with the history of the improvisational theater, and then I'm going to talk about some of the people that have expanded the art form. And then I'll tell you where you too can go and get schooled in the fine art of improv. Allow me to begin at the beginning where you should with all things, and that's with the Greeks. They had a little thing called satyr plays, their own debauched version of improv. And according to the Cambridge History of Classical Literature, satyr plays featured mock drunkenness, brazen sexuality, pranks, sight gags, and overall general merriment, or as we would call today, awesomeness. It was one of the three varieties of Athenian drama, the other two being, of course, tragedy and comedy. We're all familiar with those. And a lot of the activities in the satyr plays were improvised, which was significant because it was the first time in history that actors played multiple roles and incorporated improvisation to make them believable. And after the satyr plays came the Roman comedies. And I learned from Martha Bellinger's book, A Short History of Drama, that the theater of ancient Rome was a thriving and diverse art form, with festival performances and street theater, nude dancing, and acrobatics, which, by today's standards, awesomeness, right? And these street performances gathered a lot of attention. The audience was any passerby on the street, and this included all classes of society. It really helped spread the word and influence the society. And theater began to take an important role in the Roman society, and a lot of the actors and writers of these plays were elevated to almost elite status for their performances. And during this improv period, it flourished and began to spread to other countries like some weird comic disease. And like every great disease, there's always somebody that wants to cure it. Which leads us to the Middle Ages, where the battle between theater and the church happened. The theater performances tended to embrace pagan beliefs and rituals, and during the Middle Ages, this was not good with the church. The church didn't like it. They didn't want anything that would propagate paganism. They kind of wanted to be the main outlook of life for everyone in Europe during the Middle Ages. So in order to kind of stomp out that flame, they made theater seem like it was sinful for its themes and banned it across Europe. But like anything, like here in America, if you ban pot, there's always that guy standing on the street that manages to sell it. And that's what happened in medieval times. There was a guy on the street and he'd do improv, just for, fun. And even though it was illegal, he'd still do it, and he'd improv based off people's reactions. Like he could be doing bits about how evil the church is, and oh, that guy's not taking this too well, I better change my tune. And then he'd go all positive church, and that's kind of how it evolved from there until, that whole church thing blew over. And that brand of improv spread. And it evolved into what's now called commedia dell'arte, or the Italian comedy. And I have a visual aid here for you so you can visualize what those people used to dress like. Commedia dell'arte is basically improv in its purest form, except with masks that cover half the face, so you don't get to use your facial features when you act. And each mask represents a character, a base character, if you will, with a name like Pantalones. And they have mannerisms and characteristics they have to follow. So when you're improvising a character, like Pantalones might have a special like swagger to his walk, so when you walk across stage, you have to incorporate that in, and it's all very, very interesting. And this was all throughout Italy, performed by professional troops. And it took place on temporary stages, mostly on city streets though, and occasionally in court venues. And improv continued to grow and evolve up into the 1900s. And pretty soon, it became close to what you might see on TV today on Whose Line Is It Anyway? Thanks to a woman named Viola Spolin. There you go. She was basically a glorified babysitter during the Great Depression. She worked with inner city kids, immigrants, and the poor, basically anybody the government didn't want to touch. And to keep these people occupied during the day, she invented theater games. And these are the games that you would see on Whose Line, or in any improv theater you could go to in the Portland area. These games were honed and made better and turned into those games, but essentially she created every game. She'd see, like, say you were having trouble creating a character, staying in character, or developing an accent to go with the character, she'd make a game for you to get better at that. And she wrote a book, and that, I can't remember the name of it, and I didn't write it down, but it's hundreds of games to use. And then that got picked up, and it moved down the line, and a man named Keith Johnstone set the modern rules of improv theater. In the 1970s, he co-founded Loose Moose Theater, and Canada invented theater sports, which has become a staple of modern improv. The theater is essentially improv performed by two teams for points over a span of the performance. And you get points for groaners, or deducted points for bad jokes. And by the end of it, you tally up who wins and who loses. And like every good thing in life, there has to be a winner and a loser. And of course, in acting, they had to devise a way to make that happen. And so, we've talked about the history and some of the people. Let's talk about where you can go to school to learn these fine arts. You, of course, can go to Chicago, because that's where everybody goes. And that's where Second City is. And if you've heard of Second City, you might know some of the names. A lot of the actors that are on Saturday Night Live, or were on Saturday Night Live, studied at Second City. We have Chris Farley, John Candy, John Belushi, Martin Short, Dan Aykroyd. Now I know 3 of the 5 guys I just listed are dead, but they're the most memorable to me. And then there's also in Chicago the Improv Olympic, and they're also in Hollywood. A lot of shows recruit from them, like Mad TV, The Daily Show, Saturday Night Live, did I say The Daily Show? Yeah. And then Conan O'Brien, of course. Now you're probably thinking, wow, those are some great places, Jared, but I live in Oregon. You're in luck. There's places in Oregon, too. Right down in Northwest Portland is the Brody Theater, and they offer classes in sketch comedy, improv comedy, and stand-up comedy. So they've got the trifecta. There's some angle of comedy you want to learn to do on stage, they've got it. And there's also comedy sports, which is basically theater sports, and that one's over in Milwaukee, and it's not as good. And then there's classes that you can take here, and I encourage that because the instructor is fantastic. Well, we've certainly had some good times today. I told you about the rich cultural history of improv comedy. I've even managed to speak about some of the influential people in the improv world. And to top it off, I told you about some places where you could go get schooled in the fine art form. I hope you walk away with some info that you might retain and maybe even have some inspiration to take a class or two. Thank you.